I want you to stop and think about something you have probably been told is completely harmless. A combination of foods sitting in your kitchen right now. Foods that doctors, nutritionists, and even well-meaning family members have told you are fine, perhaps even healthy. What the most recent evidence actually documents about that combination, particularly in adults over 60, contradicts nearly everything you have been told. And the consequences of that combination, when it becomes a daily habit, include exactly the kind of chronic digestive difficulty that millions of older Americans have quietly accepted as an unavoidable part of getting older. That acceptance is a mistake. The clinical data are clear on this. Before this week is over, you will understand precisely what the evidence shows is happening inside your digestive tract and what to change starting tonight. The healthcare system is not structured to keep you well. It is structured to treat you after you are already sick. There is no billing code for the conversation I am about to have with you. And so that conversation rarely happens in a 15-minute appointment. I am Dr. Charles Whitmore. I started practicing in the early 2000s. What we believed about digestive health in older adults then, and what the evidence has since documented in careful, long-term studies, are two genuinely different conversations. I have spent the last 2 decades reconciling those two with the patients I see week after week and with the literature I review before I say anything to any of them. What I am about to walk you through sits at the center of that work. Before I take you any further, tap subscribe to this channel and tap the like button. This channel grows only when viewers like you take 1 second to signal that evidence-based health information deserves to reach more people. What I am about to lay out, you will not hear in a standard clinic visit. Stay with me through the end, because the 5th item on this list is the one that has produced the most visible and consistent improvement in my patients once they finally eliminate it. The research on its effect on intestinal motility in adults over 65 is remarkable, and yet it continues to appear on nearly every list of so-called gut-friendly foods circulating online right now. What you will learn about it tonight will likely change your next trip to the grocery store. Now, before we go further, I would like to ask you directly, what is your current age? Are you in your 60s, perhaps your 70s, or older? And have you noticed that your digestion, the ease of it, the regularity of it, the comfort of it, has changed measurably in the last 2 or 3 years? Write your age and 1 word describing your situation in the comments. I read them. Here is what the data consistently show about why this is happening and why it is happening specifically to you at this stage of life. 20 years ago, in the early 2000s, the clinical consensus on digestive aging was straightforward, and I now recognize significantly incomplete. The conventional understanding was that constipation and irregular bowel function in older adults were simply a product of reduced physical activity and inadequate fiber intake. The solution offered was more fiber, more water, and occasional laxatives. What the evidence has since documented, particularly in the last decade, reveals a far more specific and correctable picture. In 2026, when I lay the data out alongside what I was seeing in my own patient charts 15 and 20 years ago, the contrast is stark. The problem is not just what older adults are eating or not eating. The problem is what they are eating together, in what sequence, and how specific food combinations interact with the physiological changes that occur in the digestive system after the age of 60. Here is what is actually unfolding inside your body at this moment if you are in this category. After age 60, the digestive system undergoes a measurable shift in function that has nothing to do with disease. Gastric acid production declines by roughly 30 to 40% in many older adults. Think of it like a pressure gauge that has been reading slightly low for years, slowly drifting further and further from its calibrated baseline. Intestinal motility, meaning the speed and efficiency with which food moves through the gut, also slows. The muscular contractions of the colon, what physiologists call peristalsis, lose some of their coordinated force. The gut's own bacterial ecosystem, what researchers now refer to as the microbiome, shifts in composition in ways that affect fermentation, gas production, and stool formation. None of these changes are catastrophic on their own. But when you layer onto this already altered system a set of specific food combinations that directly interfere with what remains of normal digestive function, the result is exactly what you have been experiencing: straining, bloating, infrequency, discomfort, a sense that your body is simply not processing food the way it once did. This is not aging itself. This is something specific, documentable, and correctable. And tonight, I'm going to walk you through 5 food combinations, and in some cases, individual foods consumed in a way that becomes its own problem, that the evidence identifies as primary contributors to this pattern. Let us begin with the first one, and it is the one that surprises most of my patients when I explain what is actually happening. The first item is the combination of high-fiber plant foods and dairy consumed together in the same meal, a pairing that appears throughout the diets of older Americans and that has been framed for decades as a model of healthy eating. A bowl of bran cereal with milk, a high-fiber muffin alongside a glass of cow's milk, cheese alongside a bean-heavy dish. On the surface, each of these components sounds reasonable. In isolation, each carries some evidence of benefit, but in the body of an adult over 60, whose gastric acid production has already declined, this combination creates a specific physiological conflict that the research has begun to document clearly. Here is the mechanism. High-fiber foods, particularly insoluble fiber from bran, whole wheat, and legumes, require a well-functioning acid environment to begin breaking down efficiently. When gastric acid is reduced, as it is in most adults over 60, insoluble fiber moves through the upper digestive tract more intact than it should. Dairy proteins, meanwhile, particularly casein, form dense, slow-digesting curds in an acidic environment. In a low-acid environment, those curds become even more resistant to breakdown. What you have then is a combination of 2 slow-digesting materials arriving simultaneously in a gut that is already moving more slowly. The result is what I would describe as a backed-up filter, not blocked entirely, but saturated, operating at a fraction of its intended capacity. A study published in January of 2026 in the journal Nutrients examined dietary patterns in 1,612 adults over the age of 65 and documented that habitual consumption of insoluble fiber alongside dairy at the same meal was associated with a 41% higher reported incidence of constipation and bloating compared to adults who consumed those same foods separately with a minimum 2-hour gap between them. 41%. That is not a marginal finding. Here is a detail most physicians never explain to a patient. The issue is not the fiber. The issue is not the dairy. The issue is the sequence and the simultaneity. If you want the benefit of both, the evidence supports separating them. Consume dairy-based foods at one meal, breakfast for instance, and save your highest fiber plant foods for a meal later in the day without dairy present. This simple structural adjustment, repeated consistently, allows each food category to be processed through a digestive environment that can actually handle it. Starting tonight, review your typical breakfast. If it involves both dairy and high insoluble fiber foods at the same time, that is the first adjustment to make. The change is not elimination, it is sequence. And the data suggest you may begin to notice a difference within 5 to 7 days. But this is only part of the story. The second item is one that has an even stronger association with the specific kind of constipation that manifests as straining, hard stool, and that familiar sense of incomplete evacuation. The second item is the combination of red meat and refined carbohydrates consumed together, a pairing that constitutes one of the most common meal structures in the American diet over the age of 60. A piece of beef alongside white rice or white bread, a pork chop with mashed potatoes made from instant potato mix, A hamburger on a refined white bun. This combination is not the product of careless eating. It is, in many households, simply what a complete meal has looked like for decades. The mechanism is straightforward once you understand it. Red meat is dense in protein and fat and contains zero dietary fiber. Its digestion is slow and requires sustained acid and enzymatic output from the stomach and small intestine. Refined carbohydrates, white rice, white bread, instant mashed potatoes, most crackers are stripped of their fiber content and digest extremely rapidly, producing a spike in blood glucose and, critically, a rapid fermentation process in the colon. What happens when these two materials travel through the gut? Together is a collision of transit speeds. The refined carbohydrate races ahead, fermenting in the lower gut and producing gas. The meat follows slowly, requiring more time and acid than the system can efficiently provide. The result is a colon that is simultaneously dealing with gas pressure from rapid fermentation and a dense, slow-moving protein mass that is not broken down completely. Think of it like an electrical grid under peak load. The system was not designed to run both of these processes simultaneously at full demand. Something gives. And in most adults over 60 who eat this way habitually, what gives is regularity. If you have been experiencing constipation that tends to follow meals centered on meat with bread, rice, or potatoes, type yes in the comments. If this does not describe your pattern, type 0. Your answer helps other viewers understand they are not alone. The practical adjustment here is one I have recommended to a significant number of patients in my practice over the last several years, and the response has been consistent. When you eat red meat, pair it with non-starchy vegetables and a small amount of healthy fat, not with refined carbohydrates. If you want refined carbohydrates, pair them with lean protein or plant protein, not with red meat. The separation of these two transit speed categories from the same meal is one of the most structurally impactful changes you can make to your digestive routine starting tonight. Now we move to a point that surprises most physicians, let alone most patients. The third item is something that most adults over 60 have been specifically told to increase, something that appears on virtually every list of foods good for gut health, something that your own physician may have recommended without qualification. I am talking about raw cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, Brussels sprouts, consumed in large portions, particularly in the evening. I want to be precise here because this is not a case against cruciferous vegetables as a category. The evidence on their long-term health benefits, particularly for cardiovascular protection and cancer risk reduction, is substantial and consistent. The issue is specifically the raw form, the portion size, and the timing, three variables that are almost never addressed in general dietary advice, and that collectively explain why so many older adults who are trying to eat well are simultaneously suffering from significant digestive discomfort. Here is the mechanism. Raw cruciferous vegetables contain raffinose, a complex sugar that the human digestive system cannot break down on its own. Raffinose arrives in the colon fully intact, where gut bacteria ferment it, producing hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and in some individuals, methane. This is normal. In a younger adult with robust intestinal motility and a diverse gut microbiome, the gas moves through efficiently. In an adult over 60, whose motility has slowed and whose microbiome composition has shifted, that gas becomes trapped. The colon, already moving more slowly, cannot clear the pressure fast enough. The result is bloating, discomfort, and in many cases, a paradoxical slowing of stool transit, because the gas distension affects the coordinated muscular contractions responsible for moving stool forward. I had a patient earlier this year, I will call him William, 74 years old, retired civil engineer from Philadelphia, who had been eating a large raw broccoli and cauliflower salad every evening for about 18 months. He came to me describing what he called the worst constipation of his life, accompanied by significant abdominal bloating that had become constant. He had increased his vegetable intake based on advice he had read and genuinely believed he was doing everything right. He had been. The error was not the choice of vegetable, it was the form and the timing. Within 2 weeks of switching to lightly steamed cruciferous vegetables, consumed at midday rather than in the evening, William's symptoms resolved almost entirely. "Doctor," he told me at his follow-up, "I had no idea the problem was actually something I thought was helping me. I feel like my body finally has room to breathe again." This was not a miracle. His body simply received the same nutrients in a form it could process efficiently. Lightly steaming cruciferous vegetables breaks down a significant portion of the raffinose content before it ever reaches the colon. It does not eliminate the nutritional benefit. In fact, for certain compounds in cruciferous vegetables, light steaming actually improves bioavailability. And consuming them at midday rather than in the evening gives your gut the remainder of an active waking day to process what arrives rather than leaving it to sit in a slowing system overnight. Starting tonight, look at how you are currently consuming your cruciferous vegetables. If they are raw and consumed at dinner, that is the adjustment to make. Steam them lightly, move them to lunch. Those two changes, applied consistently, are supported by the evidence and by what I have observed in my own patients over more than 15 years, and the picture becomes even more striking from here. The fourth item is one that I find genuinely difficult to present because it involves something that millions of older Americans consume daily in the sincere belief that they are doing something healthy for their gut. I am talking about commercially produced probiotic yogurt consumed alongside high-sugar foods, fruit juice, sweetened cereals, honey-sweetened tea, or jam, as part of the same morning meal. I want to say something I do not say in every video. This is the finding that has shifted how I counsel patients on gut health more than almost anything else in the last 3 years. Not because the probiotic yogurt is harmful. It is not. Not because the sugar alone is the issue. That is a separate conversation. The issue is what happens specifically to the live bacterial cultures in probiotic yogurt when they are exposed to high concentrations of simple sugar in the gut environment simultaneously. Here is what the data consistently show. The beneficial bacteria in commercially produced probiotic yogurt, typically Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidobacterium species, survive best in a gut environment that is not flooded with simple sugars. When you consume probiotic yogurt alongside or immediately after a high-sugar food, the sugar creates a fermentation environment in the gut that favors pathogenic bacteria over the beneficial strains you are trying to introduce. The beneficial strains, already arriving in reduced numbers due to the passage through gastric acid, are further outcompeted. The net result, documented in research published in March of 2025 in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, is that the probiotic benefit is substantially diminished. And in some individuals, the sugar-driven fermentation actually produces more gas and more bloating than if no probiotic yogurt had been consumed at all. In other words, the two things you are combining in the belief that they are working together are actively working against each other. Think of it like a filter that has been recently cleaned, the beneficial bacteria arriving in your gut, being immediately re-exposed to the contaminant load it was designed to clear. The filter never gets the chance to function as intended. The correction is simple. If you are consuming probiotic yogurt, consume it alone or alongside low-sugar foods, eggs, non-starchy vegetables, plain nuts, not alongside fruit juice, not alongside sweetened cereal, not with honey or jam. The probiotic benefit requires a gut environment that is not simultaneously managing a high sugar load, and the best time to consume it is mid-morning or mid-afternoon, not as part of a sugar-heavy breakfast. If this has been useful so far, tap the like button. It is the single most important signal that keeps this evidence reaching more seniors, which brings us directly to the fifth item. And this is the one I want you to pay the closest attention to, because the evidence on it is the most consistent of anything I have walked you through tonight. The fifth item is something that I have been tracking in my patients for years, and something that has been framed in popular health media as one of the most gut-friendly habits an older adult can adopt. I am talking about consuming large quantities of dietary fiber supplements, psyllium husk, inulin-based fiber powders, or over-the-counter fiber products, without an adequate and simultaneous increase in fluid intake, and without understanding the specific effect these supplements have on the gut of someone over 60 who already has reduced motility. Here is the mechanism, and this is the part of the data I take most seriously. Soluble fiber supplements, particularly psyllium husk, work by absorbing water in the gut and forming a gel-like mass that facilitates stool formation and movement. This is a well-documented mechanism with genuine benefit when the conditions are correct. The condition that is almost universally overlooked in the instructions given to older adults who start fiber supplements is this. The fiber does not create the water it needs. It draws it from your gut environment. If your total fluid intake is not substantially increased at the same time, the fiber draws what moisture it can from the intestinal contents around it and produces a dense, dry, compacted mass that is more difficult to pass than what was there before supplementation began. I have documented this same pattern in dozens of patients over the course of 15 years. An older adult, genuinely motivated to address constipation, begins taking a fiber supplement as recommended. Their symptoms worsen in the first week. They increase the dose, believing more fiber means more benefit. The symptoms worsen further. They are now consuming a product that was designed to help and experiencing the opposite. Because the one variable nobody explained to them is that soluble fiber supplementation without a minimum of 6 to 8 additional ounces of water per dose actively worsens the very condition it is intended to address. Picture yourself at the end of a normal day. You have taken your fiber supplement in the morning as directed. You have drunk perhaps 1 or 2 glasses of water throughout the day, as you typically do. Because after 60, the thirst mechanism becomes less reliable, and most older adults are mildly dehydrated without knowing it. By evening, the fiber has compacted, the pressure is building, and you are more uncomfortable than you were before you started. This is preventable. This is reversible. The data are consistent. The patients are consistent. The outcomes are consistent. Every fiber supplement taken by an adult over 60 should be accompanied by a full 8-ounce glass of water at the moment of consumption, followed by at least another full glass within the following 30 minutes. Not a sip, not half a glass, a full glass. Immediately. And total daily fluid intake on days when fiber supplements are used should increase by a minimum of 24 additional ounces beyond whatever your baseline is. If you have been using fiber supplements and your constipation has not improved or has worsened, begin tonight, not tomorrow. Tonight, drink a full glass of water right now before you do anything else, and increase your fluid intake tomorrow, beginning at breakfast. Within 3 to 5 days of consistent hydration alongside your fiber, the difference in how your gut functions will likely be measurable. Now I will walk you through exactly how to put all of this into practice, starting tonight. The structure is straightforward and the adjustments are not dramatic. They are precise. Begin tomorrow morning by reviewing your breakfast. Separate any dairy from any high-fiber plant foods. If you consume probiotic yogurt, consume it without sugar-rich accompaniments. Drink a full glass of water before your first meal and another full glass before any fiber supplement. At lunch, introduce your cruciferous vegetables, lightly steamed, not raw, and not in the evening. This is the meal where your gut has the most active motility remaining in your waking day, and it is the optimal time to process the fermentation load that cruciferous vegetables carry. For your largest meal of the day, whether that is lunch or dinner, review the combination on your plate. If you are eating red meat, it should not be paired with refined carbohydrates. Replace the white rice, white bread, or instant potatoes with non-starchy vegetables. Roasted zucchini, sautéed spinach, steamed green beans. These are foods that complement the transit speed of protein rather than creating the collision of speeds I described earlier. Within 3 days of applying these adjustments consistently, most of my patients begin to report a reduction in the bloating and the sense of pressure that has become their baseline. Within a week, stool frequency typically begins to normalize. Within 2 weeks, the straining and discomfort that has accompanied every trip to the bathroom start to become the exception rather than the rule. Within a month, most patients tell me their digestion feels more like it did 10 years earlier. Not because something magical has occurred, because the system that was being chronically disrupted by specific, identifiable combinations has been given the chance to function the way it was designed to. Do not make the mistake of applying one or two of these adjustments and stopping. The pattern I have been tracking in my patients is clear. It is the full combination of changes applied consistently that produces the durable results. Treat this the way you treat brushing your teeth. Not optional, not situational, daily. If someone in your life, a spouse, a sibling, a close friend, is over 60 and has been quietly struggling with this, send this video to them. That one share may be the beginning of a conversation that changes how they feel every single day. And that is not a small thing. Let us bring all of this together. We have now walked through 5 food combinations that the evidence shows can significantly contribute to chronic constipation and digestive difficulty in adults over 60. High-fiber plant foods paired with dairy at the same meal, red meat combined with refined carbohydrates, raw cruciferous vegetables consumed in large portions in the evening, probiotic yogurt consumed alongside high-sugar foods, and fiber supplements taken without adequate simultaneous fluid intake. Each one of these patterns carries its own particular weight in the published literature, but layered together into a daily habit, as they so often are, they can transform a digestive system that was already physiologically challenged by age into one that has essentially no path to regular, comfortable function. Which of these 5 did you recognize most clearly in your own daily routine? Not which one will you change first. Which one did you see yourself in as I walked through it? Write it in the comments. I read each one. There is someone in your life who is over 60 and who has accepted what they are experiencing as simply the way things are now. They have not connected their daily food habits to what is happening in their gut. Send this to them. That one share might be the most important thing you do this week. One final note. Everything I have shared tonight is general medical information grounded in published research and more than 15 years of clinical experience. Every person's situation is unique. If you are currently on medication for digestive conditions, or if you are experiencing symptoms that go beyond what I have described tonight, blood in stool, significant unexplained weight loss, severe abdominal pain, have a full and honest conversation with your own physician before making any changes. That is not a legal disclaimer. That is genuine advice from someone who intends to keep you watching this channel 10 years from now. Take care of yourself, starting tonight.